bury it deep beneath layers of steel and concrete, protect it with cutting-edge defenses, and insist for years that its real purpose is purely peaceful. Yet even these extreme measures have not shielded Iran's controversial heavy water reactor at Arak from the roar of Israeli jets. Welcome everyone to one of the most startling military flashpoints in recent history. Today, we will unravel the tense drama unfolding between these two regional powers. How did it start? Who stands to lose the most? And is there any hope of escape from a nightmarish spiral of escalating conflict? In this scenario, we aim to piece together the events that led to the dramatic airstrike on the unfinished Arak heavy water reactor, explore the ripples spreading across the region, and reveal how these shockwaves might impact international relations for decades to come. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand what truly happened inside Iran's nuclear facilities, far from the reach of ordinary cameras, and why this clash has triggered such global alarm. Let us begin with the heart of the matter, the decision by Israel to launch an airstrike on a site that, to many observers, was already in a partially dismantled or at least heavily monitored state. International watchdogs had once insisted that Iran's heavy water reactor posed immediate risks because spent fuel from such a facility could yield plutonium, making it a possible springboard to nuclear weaponry. In 2015, Iranian officials, along with world powers, settled on a nuclear agreement that mandated reconfiguring Arak so that it would produce only a limited amount of plutonium, insufficient for any bombs. Outside observers breathed a sigh of relief, at least for a time. But as tensions mounted, Israel's leadership accused Iran of ignoring or delaying the reactor's conversion, turning the incomplete site back into a potential threat. In the seventh day of a violent confrontation that spanned skies and deserts, a formation of Israeli warplanes streaked over Iranian airspace and dropped bombs designed with near-surgical precision to strike Arak's core. In mere moments, that single decision transformed the region, sparking fierce debate among international analysts and fueling speculation about a broader conflict no one claims to want, but many believe inevitable. We will dissect how this single event set off a chain reaction of questions, puzzling the global community. Did Iran secretly refuse to finish the reconfiguration steps required by the nuclear deal? Or were these steps slowed simply by technical hurdles, while Israeli intelligence perceived a covert push to maintain nuclear weapons potential? In this episode, we peel back the layers, charting every twist that led to the mounting anxiety characterizing political circles in Tehran and Jerusalem, and beyond. Before we dive into the details, let us outline the key themes you can expect from this in-depth investigation. First, we will uncover the scientific and strategic significance of Arak's heavy water reactor. Second, we will explore Israel's perspective, including the reasons behind this daring strike. Third, we will step inside the labyrinthine halls of Iranian nuclear policy, shining a spotlight on the claims that this program is purely peaceful. Finally, we will examine the broader implications, how these attacks affect the standing nuclear agreement, what role global powers might play in the coming months, and which miscalculations could light the fuse of a full-scale war in the Middle East. Right from the get-go, the Israeli military declared that its campaign was aimed squarely at dismantling Iran's capacity to produce weapons-grade plutonium. Even though international inspectors had confirmed that Arak's was not yet brimming with nuclear material, the site's presence triggered old fears. Skeptical voices in Israel pointed to the possibility that advanced technology could swiftly transform the reactor into a platform for bomb-making if it were ever completed as originally designed. One Israeli official, speaking under condition of anonymity, suggested that this was not some random preventative strike, but part of a broader plan, a multi-target sweep of Iranian enrichment centers all across the country, each of vital strategic importance. Of course, skeptics question whether the Israeli action might have created precisely the threat it sought to neutralize. Could the destruction of key reactor components spark new determination in Tehran to secretly rebuild them? Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency, known as the IAEA, is left with the high-stakes job of verifying precisely how much damage has been done to Arak, and if anything salvageable remains beneath the rubble. We will continue searching for answers to these questions, but first, let us shift focus to the timeline of this confrontation. The seventh day of open conflict was already seething with tension when the Arak strike took place. There had been bombing runs, repeated rocket salvos, and mounting casualty reports from both sides. Arak itself sits roughly 250 kilometers southwest of Tehran, a remote location by many accounts, yet one possessing massive strategic importance. Although Iran had reportedly removed the original calandria, the reactor core, as part of the 2015 nuclear deal, the latest chatter suggests that smaller-scale but nonetheless significant civil construction was still ongoing. Israel evidently believed that these upgrades held a sinister intention. According to statements from the Israeli government, Tehran's leadership intentionally instructed workers to drag their feet on the facility's redesign. Why? Allegedly, to hold over the West's head the vague threat of nuclear achievement, used as a bargaining chip in an endless dance of negotiating and renegotiating sanctions. Israeli forces assert that the strike on Arak was precision-crafted to destroy the core seal used for plutonium production, effectively forcing an indefinite halt on any possibility of future bomb building. Iranian officials naturally refute these claims, maintaining that the reactor project had no malicious agenda. In the days that followed, global intelligence images revealed a large hole punched through the reactor's domed roof, plus indications of structural damage to adjacent heavy water production facilities. The IAEA's initial photos were unclear, but further investigation revealed how the distillation towers, vital for producing heavy water, were torn apart by the bombardment. This sort of damage is not easily reversed. Even a robust and well-funded nuclear program might struggle to rebuild swiftly. But as many watchers of this continuing drama know, Arak is not the only installation in Iran that has faced Israeli firepower. Natanz, the country's main uranium enrichment facility, has been hit repeatedly during the same wave of strikes. Each time, Iranian officials claimed that the targeted sections were either administrative or old hangars, but satellite images and video evidence hint otherwise. Reports indicate that the pilot fuel enrichment plant at Natanz, previously used for advanced centrifuge testing, was partially destroyed, with multiple cascades of centrifuges suffering catastrophic damage. Even the subterranean halls deep below the facility lost electrical power, prompting concerns that irreplaceable machinery was severely compromised. If that were not alarming enough, we have also heard mention of Isfahan, home to several of Iran's nuclear technology centers. Pounded by an Israeli attack that wrecked at least 4 buildings, Isfahan's scientists now ask themselves what might be next. Will the advanced facilities in Fordow, rumored to be protected by layers of stone well within a mountain, stand as the final fortress if Israel, or other allied powers, tries to deliver a decisive blow? So far, Fordow's defenses appear to remain largely intact, yet sources suggest that President Donald Trump has considered a role for the United States, specifically a contribution of specialized munitions, sometimes referred to as bunker-busting bombs, which alone might suffice to crack open Fordow's thick rock shield. The tension here is enormous. Would the U.S. risk direct involvement at this stage, or might such an extreme measure spark a chain reaction of conflict unmatched in recent memory? Examining the politics of this standoff, it is vital to recall how we reached this delicate juncture. Soon after the 2015 agreement, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was implemented, the U.S. administration had a dramatic shift in stance. By 2018, then-President Trump withdrew from the deal, calling it inadequate. Sanctions snapped back into place, and Iran responded by breaching more and more of the restrictions originally agreed upon, especially in terms of uranium enrichment. Most recently, the IAEA declared with serious concern that Iran's stockpile of uranium enriched to 60% purity had grown significantly, placement within a short step of weapons-grade levels. To the Israeli government, this was proof enough that decisive action could no longer be postponed. Benjamin Netanyahu, currently Prime Minister of Israel, said that preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear arms was not just an Israeli priority, but a global imperative. Without presenting concrete details, he insisted that intelligence from the region proved Iranian scientists were scarily close to crossing a threshold that would enable nuclear weapons production in a very short time. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, blasted these allegations. He deemed the Israeli attacks a brazen violation of international law and insisted that Iran has never sought atomic bombs, pointing instead to religious principles forbidding such weapons. Caught in the middle is the IAEA, helmed by Director General Rafael Grossi, who must balance transparency and thoroughness at a time when tensions could explode at any minor spark. Grossi's recent statements highlighted the difficulties faced by inspectors on the ground. Many of the advanced centrifuges essential for Iran's enrichment have lost power or may have been physically destroyed in the bombardments. The deeper question is, if those centrifuges are ultimately replaced, who will track them? How quickly can they be brought back online? Could covert facilities exist beyond the detection of international inspectors? And perhaps most chillingly, has the recent wave of attacks only encouraged Iran's leadership to accelerate a secret path to nuclear armament? Amid the barrage, casualties accumulate on both sides. Iran has fired hundreds of ballistic missiles into Israeli territory, seeking to demonstrate that any incursion will be met with fierce retaliation. The Prime Minister's office in Israel has confirmed that these missiles have claimed dozens of lives and forced residents into bomb shelters. Meanwhile, Iran's health ministry puts the number of deceased Iranians at more than 200 people, though a human rights organization operating outside of Iran has publicly estimated that the death toll is approaching 600. The disparity in these figures underscores the difficulty of verifying the true scale of the devastation, when warplanes, missiles, and ground-level conflict swirl in so many directions. We are still only in the early days of comprehending the aftershocks from the raid on Arak and the parallel strikes on other nuclear-associated facilities in Iran. In such a volatile landscape, it is easy to ask, where does this end? Will the conflict spiral until one side forcibly dismantles the other's strategic arsenal, or until external powers intervene? Those who see a diplomatic off-ramp hope the global community will step in more decisively. Russia and China have historically supported Tehran to various degrees, and they might press for a swift cessation of hostilities, especially if the nuclear infrastructure becomes too heavily damaged to be rescued, and if the risk of radioactive contamination intensifies. European governments, once architects of the 2015 nuclear deal, now fear being sidelined by the unstoppable momentum of aggression. If you are stunned so far by just how far both sides appear willing to go, feel free to share your reaction with a brief thumbs up. It is moments like these, marked by lightning-fast raids and the precarious possibility of nuclear escalation, that push tensions to the breaking point. Are we witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in the region's conflicts, or does the global community still have the power to call both parties back from the brink? Let us dig deeper into the personal aspect, the individuals making these fateful decisions. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has long declared preventing a nuclear-armed Iran his highest priority. His critics argue that such singular focus can overshadow all other diplomatic avenues. On the Iranian side, top leaders stand behind their public stance that nuclear weapons violate Islamic law and that any attacks by Israel only fortify the resolve of Iranian scientists. Caught in between are citizens under rocket fire, nuclear experts whose life's work is being destroyed in an instant, and families who question whether they dare remain in their homes. We can trace the seeds of this conflict back through decades of suspicion, regional rivalry, and high-stakes accusations. Israel has frequently hinted it stands ready to use force to prevent Iran from crossing the nuclear threshold. Iran, equally, has pointed to Israel's rumored arsenals of nuclear weapons, in an arena where each side views perceived aggression as justification for further violence. Every day escalates dangers that would chill the most seasoned diplomat. Hidden behind the war of words and bombs is the technology of nuclear development, which can be bafflingly complex. The mention of a heavy water reactor stirs images of scientific jargon, yet the concept is simple enough. Heavy water moderates nuclear reactions, and the spent fuel can yield plutonium. That plutonium can form the payload of one of the deadliest types of nuclear bombs. For years, Iranian officials swore that no such outcome would ever be realized under their watch. Inspectors arrived, cameras were installed, and certain components were removed or even filled with cement. The hope among Western negotiators was that Arak would never again present a real threat. Nevertheless, the new wave of Israeli strikes underscores how fragile that assumption truly was. If, as Israeli sources allege, the facility remains surprisingly close to its original design, it might take only months to revert it fully back to arms-producing form. Meanwhile, if the reactor was truly incapable of plutonium generation, the question becomes, how did this site still end up on Israel's target list? Was this simply a show of force meant to devastate Iran's confidence? Or does Israel hold clandestine intelligence that has yet to be revealed to the general public? While many are riveted by the immediate consequences, the smoke, the craters, the international condemnation or support, some experts warn to keep an eye on the bigger picture. This includes the intangible yet very real shift in Middle Eastern alliances. Other countries in the region, some historically at odds with Iran, could view this as an opportunity or a threat, depending on their vantage point. Likewise, friends of Israel may applaud the raids, but worry about the longer-term price in terms of backlash, terror attacks, or broader entanglements with major world powers. Also worthy of attention is the fate of the nuclear deal itself. So long as bombs keep raining down, it is difficult to see how negotiations might resume. Iranian leadership could declare that the destruction of major facilities, combined with renewed sanctions, leaves them no choice but to accelerate everything in their power that could bolster national defense. In other words, attacks aimed at halting the nuclear program might ironically spur Iran's deeper commitment to ramp it up, albeit in secret. Another major figure looming over the situation is President Donald Trump and his reported willingness to consider direct U.S. participation in certain strikes. Officially, the U.S. government's stance is that it is open to negotiation but will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. The question is, would Washington risk unleashing an even larger conflagration to ensure that outcome? The possibility of attacking Fordow, an underground stronghold built to survive the worst bombardments, deeply concerns Western diplomats. If the U.S. were to deploy its only conventional bomb large enough for the task, the entire region might erupt. Observers note that such an operation would overshadow the present conflict by leaps and bounds. Even so, we must not overlook the human toll. Iranian missile strikes have rained over civilian areas in Israel, forcing countless people to hunker down in bomb shelters as air raid sirens wail. Meanwhile, Israeli bombardments have reportedly killed not just military personnel and scientists, but also innocent families who happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Hospitals on both sides of the frontier strain to cope, doctors and nurses bracing themselves for waves of casualties. In this climate, the debate about the nuclear threat risks overshadowing the pressing humanitarian situation. Civilians, as always, stand on the front lines of crossfire they did not choose. Official statements from Tehran characterize Israel's actions as reckless, reminiscent of crossing a new red line, in the words of Abbas Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister. He references Iran's religious doctrine, describing nuclear weapons as illegitimate, and contends that the repeated attacks prove Israel's willingness to undermine Iranian sovereignty by any means necessary. He further claims that these airstrikes unify domestic sentiment within Iran, galvanizing the population around Iranian leadership during times of foreign aggression. Meanwhile, Israel's government believes that only by demonstrating relentless resolve can it prevent the unthinkable scenario of a fully nuclear-armed Iran. Israeli representatives neither confirm nor deny possessing their own nuclear warheads, but rumors abound that they have quietly amassed a formidable arsenal for many years. This secrecy, ironically, mirrors some of the very criticisms leveled against Iran's nuclear program. What is beyond question is that the entire region stands on the precipice. For every successful strike, there seems to be a retaliatory barrage of missiles. For every new wave of Iranian defiance, Israel threatens an even harsher response. The United Nations Security Council has met in emergency sessions, but so far, the large powers remain deadlocked over the best path to de-escalation. Even if they found consensus, it is unclear whether either Tehran or Jerusalem would heed the Council's proposals. Let us pause here and ask a crucial question. Does the global community have enough leverage to push these adversaries back to negotiations, or has the constant cycle of conflict shattered whatever fragile trust once existed? It is a terrifying possibility that with each new warhead produced or reactor site developed, the clock ticks ever closer to the midnight of permanent confrontation. If you want to follow these high-stakes developments as they unfold, consider subscribing so you never miss any crucial revelations. Looking ahead, the future seems to hinge on whether the main players, Israel, Iran, and perhaps the United States, can find compromise. Even if only one side is willing to talk, that alone might lower temperatures momentarily. But compromise is an elusive ideal in these circumstances. Israel interprets any sign of weakness as a green light for Iran to keep advancing toward nuclear weaponry, while Iran sees any concession as acceptance of foreign bullying and a betrayal of its national pride. Pride, in turn, is a potent force that has driven many nations into conflict throughout history. The strike on Arak, in particular, has become a rallying cry. International media coverage parted ways. Some outlets emphasized the reactor's incomplete state, painting Israel as an aggressor blowing up a site that might never have produced a bomb. Others hammered on the notion that advanced scientists can resurrect even a partially dismantled reactor faster than outsiders realize, cautioning that waiting for tangible proof of weaponization is a gamble too great to take. As for the immediate aftermath, the images of Arak's domed roof crumpled inward by explosives have already circled the world. Cell phone videos from Iranian state television broadcast plumes of smoke, followed by frantic speculation about contamination. Experts are quick to assure that the reactor was not yet operational in any significant sense, meaning that meltdown or nuclear fallout is unlikely. That said, the target itself, once a behemoth of nuclear aspiration, now stands as a battered shell. One might ask if that shell will remain a ruin or, after negotiations, be revived under even stricter oversight and limitations. Organizations like the IAEA stand poised for an even heftier workload than before, needing to intensify monitoring to ensure that no clandestine rebuild occurs. Questions abound over whether the IAEA has the resources and the clout to check each building, each corridor, and each crate of nuclear material that might be hidden away. Meanwhile, as the bombs keep falling, safe access for inspectors is far from guaranteed. Diplomacy, it seems, may be the only route to maintain any semblance of oversight. But with war clouds gathering, who knows whether or when that might come? An entire generation of Iranians and Israelis has grown up amid the rhetoric that the other side intends them great harm. Such long-standing animosity is not easily erased. The events we are currently witnessing feel like the realization of many dire predictions. Yet whether these events will stand as a fleeting confrontation or the harbinger of a protracted war could very well be decided right now by the decisions made in war rooms and through phone calls on hotlines connecting capitals far from Tehran. Ultimately, this wave of raids might serve as a grim reminder that nuclear technology, when paired with unrelenting hostility, can push the world to the brink. As of this moment, the dust has not settled. Arak, Natanz, Isfahan, and possibly Fordow remain in the center of an increasingly volatile standoff. Politicians in Washington, Jerusalem, and Tehran weigh each option. Diplomats fervently call for calm. The public, uncertain how the next move will alter their lives, watches anxiously. Let us close by highlighting that, despite the heavy subject matter, hope can still emerge. History shows that even bitter enemies have reached accords once they recognize the mutual devastation that war, and especially nuclear war, can unleash. The greatest unknown lies in whether any side is still willing to come to the table. Will the international community muster enough resolve to guide them there, or are we condemned to watch from the sidelines as bombs and missile strikes define the region's next chapter? Only time will tell, but for those living under the constant threat, time is a precious commodity indeed. May this exploration shed light on the tension, the tragedy, and the razor-thin line between peace and peril. We have gazed into the aftermath of Israel's strike on the unfinished Arak heavy water reactor in Iran, and we have followed the chain of events rippling across multiple nuclear facilities. From the vantage point of Day 7 in this violent standoff, the future remains uncertain. Stay alert, stay informed, and never forget that beyond the headlines loom the lives of real people.